Et bonjour tout quelqu'un, bienvenue, bienvenue. Nous sommes là pour Kouri-Vini Festival Léritaj Moun Kréyòl Lalwizyàn. So welcome to Kouri-Vini, the Creole Heritage Festival online, first one that we have here with Chinbo. Mon nom c'est Jonathan Myers. My name is Jonathan Myers. I'm the president of Chinbo Inc. So it is my pleasure today to host, to moderate this wonderful talk de Ladjèl à Shaval and parliyaj avec kréyatir Lotograf Kouri-Vini.
Yeah, thank you, Jonathan. Okay, hello, everyone. My name is Clif Laurent. I am the Vice President and Director of Programs for Chinbo Incorporated. I'm so excited for today. We have worked on this for a while, and I'm glad we can bring it to you. And so I'd like to introduce myself as many of you know, I'm a professional entertainer, semi-professionally. However, I work as a linguist. And so this is just really to tie into what we're talking about today. So I do work as a linguist. I've had education from the University of Leicester and University of York in linguistics and sociolinguistics. And many of you know I've been teaching Kouri-Vini for upwards of 15 years now. And so I'm really just excited for this talk that we have for you guys today, because I know, and this talk was my idea. And just to tell you about why I wanted to call it de Ladjèl au Shaval, I know that there's been a lot of challenges for people since we published the article back in 2016. There have been a lot of challenges with people trying to learn it. It's been difficult for people who are monolingual English speakers and don't have experience with other languages. Learning a new language can already be a challenge in and of itself. And so we created this orthography for you. And we know that that's a part of the challenge as well, is learning a new writing system for a new language, whereas we've had several ways that we've done it in the past. So we just really wanted to talk to you guys from our perspective on why we did what we did for you, why we made the decisions that we made for all of us here. And with that, pass it back to you.
Thanks so much, Clif. Appreciate you. And then on to our secretary, Dr. Christophe Landry.
Hey, guys. Can you hear me? Yes? All right.
Wait.
Thanks, Jonathan. Sorry, my camera is not working. Maybe it's for the better. Christophe Landry, as Jonathan mentioned, serving as secretary at the moment for Chinbo, as well as assistant programming director. Beyond Chinbo, I'm sure you guys have seen I'm pretty active in terms of genealogy and history. I have a PhD in American history, specializing in Louisiana Creoles, actually. And at Ancestry, I lead a research team over Latin America. So I have my pots in many fires, irons in many fires, is that the expression, at the moment. But I'm really happy to be here with you guys today and among really great people who collaborated on the orthography guide for Kouri-Vini. It was a community effort. Most of the people who were involved in that community effort are here today, minus Dr. Oliver Maye. But we do have Michael Gisclair, we have Eric Gaither, we have Clif Laurent as well. So everyone that you would need to answer any of the pressing questions that you have regarding the orthography are here today. So pleasure to be here.
Thanks so much, Christophe. I'm gonna pass it over to Michael Gisclair, who is also our webmaster.
Mm-hmm. Hello, my name is Mike. From Salafouche parish. I actually make Christophe and Clif and a few others in real life, not just Facebook. Back in 2010, I believe 2009, 2010 is when we met in person. And I've had the privilege to they've been kind enough to involve me in some things. I call myself a Louisiana heritage language slacktivist. but I love creating content in our languages. And I felt really privileged to be a part of the creation of the orthography guide. I strongly believe, like these other gentlemen here, that Louisiana Creole deserves its own orthographies, separate from French, separate from Haitian Creole or any other Creole. Something that's for Louisiana Creoles and by Louisiana Creoles. Yeah, glad to be here.
Merci beaucoup, Michael. And then last but not least, we have Mr. Eric Gaither, who is a huge Creole activist and supporter of the things going on. Eric?
Bon après-midi, mon nom est Eric Gaither. Mon bien content d'être ici avec vous autres. Mon graduate student ici Côte Nouvelle-York à l'Université Columbia. My name is Eric Gaither. I am very pleased to be here this afternoon with you. I am a graduate student at Columbia University in New York City, and my background is in history. I specifically work in languages other than English, particularly heritage languages in the southeastern US, including indigenous languages, Slavic languages, and Romance languages. And it is quite a pleasure to be here this evening with this panel, or this afternoon with this panel, and I look forward to our conversation.
Merci beaucoup. Merci pour être là. Tous vous autres, moi bien content pour voir tout quelqu'un là et moi envie pour commencer. Moi connais Clif, les envie pour commencer parce que nous t'avons parlé pour ça avant là. Et lui t'avait dit moi, oh ouais, nous va apprendre comment nous servir nos lotographes. Et là, moi quoi tout quelqu'un va apprendre quelque chose aujourd'hui. So I know that everybody is excited to get started. We're gonna just jump into the orthography.
All right, guys. Yeah, we're gonna jump right into it. So again, like he was explaining, what's going to happen is we're going to go through the entirety of the orthography, and don't worry, we're going to get to your questions. The way it's going to go, we're going to go through the entire orthography first, really starting off at the instructional portion of it. And then we're going to go back to the introduction. We're not going to read that right now, but after we go through the instructional portion, we're going to go back to the introduction. And Jonathan is going to ask some questions that maybe some of you already have. We will do some, explaining things ici et là, here and there while we're doing this first portion of it. And then we'll get to your questions toward the end. So I'm glad we are starting with the consonants. I'm sorry, with the vowels, because I love teaching the vowels. And yeah, so we'll start there. Can everybody see this okay? And Jonathan, you can let me know. Let me see if I can, I want to see if I can get a response.
Yeah, it looks
okay.
great. It looks great.
Perfect. Okay, guys. So actually, no. So we do have the consonants first. Christophe, I would like it if you go through those consonants, if you don't mind. I don't want to do the vowels.
Ça, c'est bon. Donc, à commencer.
Non, I want you to, moi, toi, pour commencer avec les consonants, parce que moi, moi, pour faire les voyelles.
Okay, all right, c'est bon. So, as Cliff mentioned, if we look at the top of page 5, we have 23 consonants, 13 vowels. And for the consonants, since Cliff is going to go over the vowels, that's his favorite thing to work on. I'll just run through the consonants to begin with. So there is B, which is the B, and then there's C. It's pronounced exactly like an S. There's also Che, so it's pronounced like CH in cheddar and cheese, Che. D, so that's the D. J, so like Jason, Jeffrey, so that's J, DJ. And then we skip over to F, G, H, J, K, L, M, N, N, P, R, S, C, T, V, W, Y, Z. Those are the 23 consonants.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Dr. Landry. Okay, so we have the vowels here. We have 13 vowels, and so let's go over them. And feel free, while on mute, feel free to repeat them after me. I'll repeat a few of them because these are going to be really the foundation of working with the language, or the vowels. Okay, so the first one we have is ah, ah, ah. Okay, ah. I like to liken it to the O sound that we find in the word pot. Ah, ah. The next one is the AE ligature, we call it. It has the sound of like the long A that's in the word apple. So it's ah, ah, ah. Okay. The next one is You know, it's almost like when we say duh, it's the same exact sound. Okay. And then we have the E accent aigu, the acute accent. A. This is probably the most frequent occurring vowel sound in the language. And I don't know, I think that's probably accurate. We have most of the verbs, especially our regular verbs, most regular verbs rather end in this sound. So yeah, I think it's really frequently occurring. And then we have E accent grave. Pardon. It's pronounced like the E sound in pet or set. And then we come to the I in English, but it's this E in Kouri-Vini. E. And then I like to get people, my students, I see a couple of my students here now. So I like to teach my students that this I accent grave is pronounced like the I in my name. It's Clif. Clif. And then we come to O. This is the one that's this one, it has the same sound. I was going to say that it's the least tricky of them all, but it can be tricky because we have words like toe. But obviously, as an English monolingual English speakers, for those who haven't learned yet, when people see the word T, the letters T and O, they want to say two because of the English speaking brain. But everything in our Kouri-Vini orthography is phonetic, and these outside of the diphthongs and outside of, nasals that you see on the next page, these do not change. So this is going to be an O, always an O. Okay, and then there's the O grave, which is pronounced aw. When we say aw, share, it's that sound right there. Ah. And then we have the O-E ligature. Now, this is probably the most confusing of them all for people. So the ways, one of the ways I like to get people to do this O-E ligature sound is by going back to the E, okay? This one, everybody say Do it again, Great, I know you did it great. You can tell I work with a lot of kids. That was great, and I can't even hear you. So now I want you to pucker your lips up like you're about to kiss somebody. And I want you to do the exact same vowel sound. That's how you make that sound. For all of my Tyler Perry fans out there, I also like to liken it to the sound when Medea says, "Oh, you have to talk proper. You have to talk proper." So sometimes there's even a little bit of a curl with the tongue when you hear it. So, and then back on track, we have the O-U. That creates ooh. We have that in English too, so that was typically not a problem for people. The last one is going to be another one of the more challenging ones to kind of set in. That is going to be U. I like to get people to learn this one. I say, take this letter right here. So everybody repeat after me. E. And then say like an English U. U. All right. Now put them together. EU. And then do it. See how fast you can do it. EU. You can also think of it as like, ew. that common exclamation we have in English. So just reviewing those again, I'll just do them one time and feel free to repeat after me. A, A, E, I, O, A, U, U. And there you have it.
Magnifique, magnifique, Cliff.
Merci, merci.
Michael, would you like to do the nasals, the short nasals?
Mais ouais. Mais ouais. Okay. Be patient. I stutter, y'all. So on dans. I may need help with this.
Okay.
But, so they're similar, but is more of a sorry.
That's okay. You want me to help you out there?
Pronounce the same, yeah.
Yeah.
And temps, on don. And then mon chagrin, mon chagrin, ou, oh, chat, mon fin, mon fin, bien fin. Next is on. It's more of an, it's aw, and then add an nasalization to it. So you have a cold on. No, but on. Mouton, bomb. And then right, lundi. You can also say lundi, spell it Lindi, lundi.
And a good way to think about that's perfect, Michael. A good way to think about that last one that Michael just went over is the expression that Americans use all the time. Well, at least in Louisiana. What about anywhere else? It's literally the same thing.
I have something to add too. When we're going back to the first one in this section, the arms, right? A lot of people, and I'm sure it's going to come up. It would have come up at least as a question later on, but I think it's good to address it right now since we're talking about it. There are literally 4 different spellings for the same pronunciation because these languages have a lot of homonyms. They have a lot of words that have the same sounds. They're spelled the same. And so in order to create more ease in reading, what we decided to do here was take the etymology or the derivative, where the word originated from.
Consideration. Yeah.
Yes, into consideration in order to decide how we'd spell it. For example, tan, T-A-N, can mean so, as in so much. Il avait si temps, there was so much temps, right? But then we know temps as time or the weather. And so one of the issues that we found in previous orthographies were that there are so many words that sound the same. And so in order, especially as a learner, I think that with time, anyone can learn to read in context. You know, obviously, if you're talking about a date or something, if you have to be somewhere at a certain period in the week, then context is likely going to tell you that that's temps. But we decided to minimize that level of work by just making it user-friendly so you can see a difference. Now, with that said, it doesn't eliminate homonyms altogether, but what it does do is decrease the level, the amount of them we have.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Yeah.
And then going on, these next few include they're pretty much the nasal sounds above, but with an M sound at the end. So on, molem, manger des bananes, or in the end, in the M or an N. So molem manger des bananes. Banon.
And you just used
yeah.
two actually in your sentence, your example. Your verb is one, it's a long vowel, long nasal.
Manger.
Lamb,
Lamb,
right?
c'est ça?
Yeah,
C'est
and then
ça.
banon.
Lamb, ouais. C'est vrai, c'est vrai. And then madame. And then next is on and on and ton and form. Next is and balen, batem. There's a folktale. She there's someone who tells the story, and she's like, batam. But and next is on Houston. How many of y'all from Houston here? There's a lot of Louisiana Creoles there in Houston. We love y'all. Y'all are helping keep the language alive. Sometimes better than people in Louisiana. So we appreciate and love y'all. Carlton, and then N or M, Keken. So wait.
Yeah, and your grandfather. That's another example of that fourth one, right? And
Alton.
which is Alton in English.
Yes, Alton. Mais Alton, he said.
We have this tendency in Kouri-Vini for English names that end in on, we elongate for whatever reason. So Houston, Carlton, Alton. Does it like that?
Wait, c'est ça. C'est bon. Oh, we got some
Yeah, we got one more set.
On and Madame and Banon. You notice that's a little different from the previous page, just taking into account pronunciation differences. And then in, okay, in. It isn't N, but it's in. Machine. You can also pronounce that machine, and that would be an I with an accent grave on it. But and Karim, and Oh, sorry. And then below that is in. So Catherine. But yeah.
Catherine. We have a Catherine in the audience here. We call her Set Catherine. That's
Saint Catherine. Saint Catherine.
Saint Catherine Drexel. We'll reserve who that person is until the end. If you guys want to know, you can ask in the Q&A. She might put a root on me.
Oh.
She probably already did it now.
So we can jump because earlier, thanks Michael, that was perfect. Yeah. Because we didn't have the chart up, I can go over these consonants again with you guys to show some examples here. So looking down at the foot of page 7, B, it's the same sound as in English, right? Except that we don't say B, we say B. And so we have an example here, B, B. We next have C. It's again pronounced like an S. And the example that we have here is Sa. And then there's also the S, which is pronounced C as well. So asi, right? Che, CH, teacher in English. Tuer, tuer, tuer. So that's using that U that Clif went over earlier. U. So tuer, tuer. After this, we have D, D, delta, delta. DJ is G, job. I call this the Clif all the time. Job, job, the devil, the devil. F, fee, fee. Gate, game, game. Hush, la hush, la hush. So it's aspirated in the same way that H is in English often. J, jouer, jouer. Now, for folks who are annoyed by the U, often folks like use the U and U interchangeably, but you can't. They're not interchangeable, so you'll just have to master them separately. So it's tuer, jouer, jouer, jou, jou. After this, we have ka, kouri, kouri. Next on page 8, L, l'école, l'école. M, mam. Mam is one of the ways we say mom, like in English, M-O-M, but we also use that frequently in Kouri-Vini. Mam, mam. So it's one of those open, long nasals that Michael just went over. Mam. N, nord, nord. Nye, moya, moya. So some people, and this is optional, right, will choose to use N-Y for this letter because it makes like a nya sound, or the N with a tithe here. Moya, moya. P. Popa, popa. So it's a hard P like in English. The R's are tricky. There are like 3 of them, right? This is why I call him job. Because
I'm sorry, that's a completely an accident.
Okay, so when the R is at the beginning of a word, right? We have the sound that's like ru, 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 ru. The best example I can give for doing that is like a little bit of air just before you pronounce just before the tongue hits the bottom of your mouth. Ru, ru, because the tongue goes up to pronounce the R, and then it flaps down. So ru, ru. It's not trilled like in the double R in Spanish. It's just one flap. Ru. Then in the middle, it's also similar to that, but there isn't this like kind of breath that we take just before it. Henriette, Henriette, Henriette. And then finally, we have the R that's at the end, and a sha, 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 So it's a little bit, it's longer when it's at the end, and that's just a natural emphasis that we place on final syllables in Kouri-Vini. But this particular R is cha, cha. So there's rou, oreillette, parler, cha. And I forgot to mention also, sorry, Michael, there's the example here for the middle two, parler. Very often this R is kind of almost absent, but not totally. So from that, you'll hear people say parler, and you'll hear people say parler, parler. And it's because the R and the L, the tongue does the same thing. It lifts up to the palate and then drops down. So it sounds like it's absent or almost absent, but not really. Then we have shape, chevé. Sure, go ahead.
I'm sorry about the thing about this sound and like j, like that. I've had people tell me, oh, I don't know how to make that sound. It's like, yes, you do, because you speak English. It's just not it's not as obvious as you think. Like the example for the je is leisure. Another one is garage. We do it already, and the same with the Creole R. It exists in the English words. It just not associated with the letter R, but usually with the letters D and T. Ladder, daddy. There's a lot of better, butter, So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So in the middle column, we have, like some English approximates to give you an example of what those sound like in English. And Michael's totally right. We have a lot of these sounds, including the ud, like in computer, these types of words. It's just that, we don't think of them that way. So
yeah.
What do we have next? Chez, so chez, chevet, hair. T, ton, V, vendée, W, wa. So we call it W, which means W, right? So this is going back to the Roman capitals. The W was written as like a double U, but it's actually pronounced wa. So just like in English, the W is pronounced Y, ye. You'll also see them at the end of words sometimes, like fee, on the bottom of page 7. Here for the letter F, fee. And when it's at the end of a word like that, followed by a vowel, then it's like an elongation of that vowel with like a slight Y sound. Fee. And then we have Z, zozo. Now that's bird, but it can mean many different things, including nicknames for people. So those are the consonants.
Okay. Okay, so we're going to the diacritics or accent marks. This is the thing that probably trips people up the most, not really knowing which to use or when to use which that is being used. So the first one we're going to talk about is the acute accent. Well, there's three. There are three, the acute, the grave, and the circumflex or the circumflex. The first one is the acute accent or aigu. Without reading this, so you see it, we do use it in certain cases for stress. I really just kind of jumped right down here, but that's only in cases where we ordinarily, how do I want to say that? Like Sala. Ordinarily in Kouri-Vini, no matter which areas you go to, the language has a particular rhythm. And you'll find oftentimes, well, you'll find about 99% of the time that the stress always falls on the last syllable. So we don't say parler, we say parler. And even the longer the sentence goes, the longer the stress kind of stays out. So if I say parler, parler, and then if I say I speak, or let's say I spoke, mo parler. And then if I say I want to speak, mo le parler, you can see how still the stress ends up getting added towards the end. You have a few words where that's a little bit different. So we use that here, and I'll just read it the way they say. For instance, when a word with an acute is not followed by another word requiring stress, like pa, the word retains its acute. So sala, sala. Now there does exist, there are areas where you'll hear this as salah. And sometimes you'll even hear it where it's almost not noticeable where the stress comes in at. So yeah, that's going to be the first place that we use it. And then there's the preterite. So in written Louisiana Creole, we also use the acute on the final letter in verbs to visually show a completed action. So all that this is really saying is that we use them on verbs, especially those the a verbs, a accent aigu. When I say a, meaning the e accent aigu. Parler, chanter, danser. In written Louisiana Creole, we also use the acute on the final letter to visually show a completed action. This does not change the quality of the word by shifting the stress on that syllable. It is simply a visual indication for the reader that the past tense is being employed. So we use it for the infinitive and we use it for the past tense is what this is saying. And so here are some better examples you can see with the E verbs or the English I verbs, right? If we were to write these, and these are interesting too, because a lot of times with all of these, they typically conjugate the same way. So it's very important to note whether something is happening in the past tense or not, because you can say mosoti, meaning I come from, and then you can say mosoti, like if someone just says, hey, boo, hey, are you to gone? Oh, mosoti. Or where Kitoye, where are you? And you can say, oh, mosoti. That would be this spelling right here. So the accent aigu lets you know that a completed action has happened. And again, these are very good verbs to show that, because all of these can be said while being meant as a habitual or as a present action. Which one do you like? Which one do you want? Mo choisi. You can't say mo choise, but mo choisi is by far more common. Mo choisi silala. I choose this one. Did you make a choice already? Yeah, mo choisi. That's this one. So we thought that it was important to make a distinction, or a written distinction between those two. You want to take the grave, anybody? Or is there anything else y'all think I should cover with?
No, I think it's great. We could probably use one of the conjugations in the present tense, just in present and past tense, for like throughout the pronouns, so that they can hear. So like wa, for example, to see, wa, mo wa, to wa, li wa, no wa, ye wa. That's all. It could be the present tense, but it could also be the past tense, as Clif says, spoken, right? But written, we wanted, as Clif mentioned, to show a visual representation of the verb being used in the past. And so this is why we use it.
And again, because it helps in context. Right? Yeah.
And it doesn't change the sound of it, but it's just a visual representation cue for the reader that it's the past tense.
Yes. Okay. Want to take the graph and or the circumstance?
Me, Michael?
Yeah, so, any one of them.
Okay, so I'll do the graph. So the grave, grave in English, grave, l'accent grave. We use it over certain vowels, and there are three of them: E, I, and O. So E, I, O. Let me minimize Um, and we don't use it over the A or over the U. And the reason we use the grave over these particular letters is because it literally changes the sound of those three letters, those three vowels. It softens it. So we get over the E, for example, E by itself is E, and it becomes E. I is E, and it becomes I. O is O, and it becomes O. So E, I, O. E, I, O. And we use it over those three vowels just for that reason. The circumflex, well, there are a couple of different reasons why we use it. So Clif alluded to the issue with homonyms earlier. In Romance languages, but in particular, those that have roots in what's now France, have many words that sound the exact same. This is the problem when folks are learning French or learning, I imagine, Catalan, and other languages from the area. So one of the ways that we distinguish words that sound the same but have different meanings is by using the circumflex over the vowel in the word. So looking at the example at the bottom here, we have pied, which can be a foot. Pied, oh, mon pied fait mon mal, mon pied. And it could also be a tree or a shrub, pied, pied. So they're both pied, but they obviously have very different meanings, right? So pied for the foot is spelled with the aigu. Pied for the tree is spelled with a circumflex. Can we go to the next page, please? And then the second reason we use the possessives, which is a related reason, is for possessive pronouns, or sorry, possessive adjectives. So in Kouri-Vini, a lot of the possessive adjectives sound the exact same as the personal pronouns. So we have mo can be I, to can be you, no can be we, and ye can be them. So those are the personal pronouns, but those same sounds can also mean the possessive form of those personal pronouns. So mo, my, to, your, vous is the formal version of to, and there is no circumflex over that one, and that's because it has 3 letters as opposed to 2. Next, we have so. That doesn't sound like another personal pronoun because there is no personal pronoun, which is so. That is actually li. So, li gain, infi. Li gain fi, ça c'est so fi. So. His, her, its. Next, we have no, our. Vous, again, so vous can be the plural form, just speaking to one person who you don't know really well. This is kind of rare in Kouri-Vini, but it still does happen with some frequency, where it can be used for someone you don't know, just a singular person, right? But it can also be used for the equivalent of y'all in English, so plural, you're speaking to more than one person. Vous. And then ye, with a circumflex at the end, is there. And that goes for males, females, or mixed gender group. Mo, to, vous, so, no, vous, and ye.
Michael, tu le peux prononcer ici?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, yeah. Punctuate. I'm not the best at punctuate, at the more proper punctuation. But time. So some of our friends here came up with for the morning instead of AM, matin, we use the MA. and it stands for matin. For PM, we abbreviate it LM, l'après-midi, l'après-midi, and then soir, SW. Our Haitian friends joke because but I lived in Orlando. I worked with a lot of Haitians, and as soon as it hit noon, they were saying bonsoir. I was like, what? It's not the evening, but they start saying it in the afternoon. I was like, whoa, that's different. But yeah, so but we typically say soir in the actual evening, or 10 p.m., maybe earlier, but yeah, 10 p.m. around. But abbreviations. These have been, I think stuff like this is fun to come up with, because in this sort of thing is the challenge of all heritage languages, that I don't know. We help me out. Sorry. You see this challenge everywhere in every endangered language. That was the word. Communities have to come up with either new terms or abbreviations like this. These are fun. I like this. But doctor is abbreviated doctor, fils, FS, yeah, général, monsieur, madame, mademoiselle, professor, saint. So yeah, but I think this sort of stuff is fun to figure out. So
yeah, and again, we were thinking in terms of the future of the language, not just the past of the language. We all know that for most of Louisiana's history, this language was not written in a formal way. And when it was written, it was using French orthography for most of Louisiana history. But most of the people who spoke the language weren't reading it in that or in any orthography for that matter. So thinking, ahead of time, like thinking what do we want the language to, how do we want the language to behave in written form in the present, but also most importantly in the future, we had to think about things like abbreviation. How will we represent time in these different things? So this is why we included it in the orthography guide. And the guide is not long. We're almost at the end here. Capitalization and hyphenation is the next section. So a lot of these are going to seem familiar to you because they're similar to the rules in English. So like business names, the first letter capitalized, countries, first letter capitalized, given names. So that's, first names, middle names, last names. Those are all capitalized. Nationalities, capitalized as well. Proper names, street names, titles, all capitalized. So those all are the same rules that exist in English. And then we have lowercase first letters, some adjectives. Those or using a lowercase letter. So mot faim, so faim is the adjective, hungry, and so it's with a small f. Mot joli, I'm beautiful, so that's with a small g. And then we have nouns. So nouns are also used with a small letter. Okay. Hyphenation, this is one difference.
Wait, before you get to hyphenation, I want to add, a lot of times people don't, and I'm sorry to cut you off, a lot of times people confuse that, in English, language names are considered proper nouns. In Kouri-Vini, they are not. So when you would write Kouri-Vini in the Kouri-Vini orthography, you would write it as lowercase, unless, like it says here, it's the beginning of a sentence. So that is one exception.
Yeah, so like Creole, okay. Creole, lowercase is the language. The Creole, capitalized K, is the
ethnicity.
person, a Creole, the people. So,
Yep, the ethnicity. So ethnicity is not
ethnicity,
one of the bulleted points, but it behaves the same way that nationalities do. That Michael mentioned. Yeah, absolutely. But the hyphenation is something that's very different from in English. People in English don't tend to hyphenate much and don't like to hyphenate much. So we see it with Kouri-Vini, actually, where like folks often will, just like spell it without the hyphen in the middle, but it actually needs it because the hyphenation is there to signal that both of those words are always used together. Both, or sometimes there are three of them. So looking at the examples here, animals and insects. I didn't know we had some cinematography. So animals and insects, mushafi, firefly, mushafi. So you can say moosh, but moosh is like different from a firefly. So if you want to convey a firefly, you need to say mushafi. Christian saint names, Saint Joseph, right? You can say Saint and you can say Joseph, but if you don't say them together, then they're not representing Saint Joseph, Saint Joseph. So we use a hyphen there. Countries and place names, sometimes countries and place names have hyphens too. L'États-Unis, United States, l'États-Unis. If you just say l'État, that's just state. So like what state are you talking about? So you need to use both. And the hyphen clarifies that. Given names, so you have, different given names, Jean-Baptiste, Jean-Charles, Jean-Louis, Marie-Claire, Marie-Françoise. Those are some examples with hyphens. Imperatives, we also use them, just like in French. Donne-moi ça, give me that. Donne-moi, fais-moi, fais-li. Numbers, pronouns, and utensils, we also find the hyphenation used as well with some frequency. So poêle à frire, frying pan. So a poêle is a pan, and then, but like what type of pan? So frying pan would be poêle à frire. All right, demonstratives. Do you want to do that one, Cliff?
Sure, and you just completely messed up the whole. I was trying to set the mood, set the ambiance, give you some nice strength. You were saying some good stuff, so that's I'm just trying to save face. Okay, so determiners. Well, demonstrative pronouns. Demonstratives also use hyphenation. So Kouri-Vini has a lot of post-nominal determiners, which are basically words. Determiners are words that describe something as being specific or non-specific. So when we talk about demonstratives, we're talking about this versus that. These are almost always depending on the area, you're always going to find at least a few of these. So Bugsala, these are hyphenated as well. One of the ideas I think that's been floating around is that we don't make provisions for the pronominals. And as you can see, we do right here. Now, we didn't list each and every one of them, but in addition to sebug, and this is what I call a more Gallicized version, or I guess more appropriately, a more mesolectal feature of Kouri-Vini, and that it shares in common with French. I tell my students and people all the time in conversation that, you know, along the Bayou Teche, you typically, amongst Creole speakers, you typically have, these people are a lot of the times in such close proximity with Louisiana French speakers, community-wise, and oftentimes you'll find both languages spoken by the same family. Oftentimes they're bilingual. And then a lot of the times you also have where, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, I know you know these people, you too maybe, Michael, you'll have one side of the family that speaks Kouri-Vini and the other side speaks French.
Yeah.
And so you have all of these three different things going on. So there's different reasons as to why this occurs, but we did include that phenomena, these phenomena in here. Again, we didn't list them all, but along with sebug, you also will find sebug-yé or sebug-sala. All of these are you can hear all of these. You can even hear sebug-silayé or sebug-layé, all meaning the same thing. But along with these pronominals are le, you'll hear lebug, and if so, we would spell it the exact same way with the circumflex. You hear le, L-E from French, but we would spell that the exact same way. So yeah, and then yeah, bugsilayé, bugsalaye. Hey, oh, glad we're here. So I'm not going to say, and I think I remember us having this conversation when we were in meetings developing this. We started this work, y'all, in 2015. In fact, the first draft we did of it was in 2015. I don't know if we ever published that or not, but it still exists. What we decided to do here, because, you know, I've encountered Kouri-Vini speakers who will say, well, we never said silayé, we never said salé, we just said layé or sayé or all of the many different variants. And so we're very well aware of that fact. So what we decided to do, however, especially for newer learners, we can't tell you that silayé and salayé are the most frequently occurring or the most common ones. But what we can say about this is that they provide a clear rule, a clear understanding. Silayé will never be sala. It will never be that, or it'll never be this. But these are heard. You do have people who are going to say silayé for these and salayé for those. So even though you might not hear these most commonly, they provide you I don't want to say a standard. They provide you a foundation in understanding how these work. And so my theory is, you know, you give as much as possible. If you learn as much as possible, it's easy to take away. I'm sure y'all can relate to that. So with that said, other ways you'll hear this are going to be layé. Sometimes you'll even just hear yé. But again, like we talked about in context, those things are easier to decipher rather than just reading them. And so we wanted to give people a means to understand clearly what you're reading as you continue to learn the language. Or even if you're a speaker, you know, a fluent speaker or a native speaker, all of these things become clearer. So yeah, that's that. And boom.
Great variation in the determiners, like Clif mentioned.
Yeah.
And again, we all of us here present who formed the committee for this guide wanted to not create something so rigid, and so we wanted something that was elastic, because there is diversity in terms of how people pronounce things, whether it's madame or madame or momzelle or mamzelle or buksal or buksala. There is a lot of variation. So this orthography that we've created for the community is one that's super elastic, that can accommodate probably most of the pronunciations and phenomena that happen in the language.
Summing that up, I think that there's a sentiment that in creating the orthography, we sought to standardize the language. We never sought to standardize the language. We sought to standardize a spelling to give room and make way, like he said, for the elasticity of the variations. And with that, I think that concludes this portion of it. But not Jonathan. Michael, did you have anything you want to add to that before we hand it back over to Jonathan for questions and maybe questions from the our audience?
Yeah, just like I mentioned at the beginning, one thing we saw, and we're looking at names like Ingrid, what's her name? I'm sorry. Holt. I'm sorry.
Neumann Holschuh.
Yeah, her and the work Dr. Klingler, Dr. Waldman, and so many before us have done, and we're like so grateful for everything that they've done to document the language. Without them, we wouldn't, there were we'd have to do a lot more work without the work that they've done. But one thing that that was lacking or one thing that would lack in just, say, adopting Haitian orthography, for instance, or the orthography of based on any other language, is there are sounds that are unique to our Creole that aren't necessarily in other Creoles.
Like the long nasals. That's a good example.
Long nasals, but some that immediately come to mind are and Of course, and a exist in other Creoles, but and especially are not common, and so we felt that not only does Louisiana Creole, of course, deserve its own orthography because it is a language, its own language, but there are sounds that are unique to this language that merit the creation of a unique orthography.
Thanks so much, y'all. Eric, I'd like to ask if you'd read us through a little bit of the introduction here, which may also give some information to folks that that wasn't covered during y'all's talk.
Certainly. Due to a number of complex historical factors, the Louisiana Creole language declined after 1900. The 20th century interwar period only served to marginalize and discourage the use of the language even further. Many languages, like French spoken in Missouri, Mississippi, and Alabama, did not weather the storm. But Louisiana Creole did. Today, There are hundreds of people all over the world with a desire to learn Louisiana Creole, and many are doing just that every day. Social media, especially Facebook, has been a powerfully unifying and instructive social tool to inform and engage the public on matters pertaining to the language. Zydeco music fame has helped to popularize and revalorize the language, but its newfound prestige and community value stem from community members leading the movement for greater Louisiana Creole language recognition and learning, and a recent ISO 639 name change from Louisiana Creole French to Louisiana Creole. The contributors of this guide hope to see the language grow rather than decline further. So, we have come together to produce this useful orthography guide for the language. It is not the first, but it will be the first designed specifically for the masses by Louisianans familiar with the historical and cultural context of the language. We have revisited previous orthographies used to convey Louisiana Creole, and while well-meaning and useful in academic context, we found them inadequate. Consequently, we have abandoned use of French, English, and Haitian orthographies altogether to craft a writing system that is both familiar and accessible to Americanized Louisiana Creoles. Since community learning has been our objective, it was important for us to consider symbols and sounds with which Louisianans are familiar, and we have used this as our guiding light. Now, Louisiana Creole phones have an orthography which they can proudly claim is uniquely theirs. We therefore seek to standardize the orthography presented in this guide, which is already in common use. Contributors and consultants on the guide already make use of this orthography, whether in academic publications or on social media. Additionally, the recently launched and much appreciated Louisiana Creole Dictionary online also uses the same orthography. The same patchwork of factors contributing to Louisiana Creole's decline has also contributed to complexities and taxonomies for the language in English. Race, imposed, ethnic identity, self-ascribed, and the name of the language one speaks are all intricately interwoven in Louisiana and its diasporic communities. Unlike the other regions of the world, for Louisianans, one's racial identity tends to inform one's ethnic identity, both of which determine how one identifies the Louisiana heritage language spoken. Thus, although the language transcends racialized identities, white-identified Louisianans most often self-identify today as Cajun and equally identify the language they speak as Cajun French, i.e. Louisiana French. Similarly, Black and mixed-identified Louisianans self-identify mostly as Louisiana Creole and identify the language as Creole French or French Creole. In reality, many of those white Louisianans are Creole phones, while many of their Black and mixed brethren speak Louisiana French. This has greatly complicated accurate estimations of the number of speakers of Louisiana Creole that remain today. Linguists Ingrid Newman Holsuch and Thomas A. Klinger estimate that fewer than 10,000 speakers exist. They are probably closest to the mark on that figure. Since 1900, wars and industry have reconstituted Louisiana Creole phone communities and have been cause for out-migrations by thousands to neighboring Texas, as well as to California, Illinois, and Georgia. Today, it is common to hear Louisiana Creole spoken naturally on Bayou Teche and in some civil parishes along the Mississippi River above New Orleans. Thanks to technologies and genuine interest, more speakers are appearing throughout the nation and world.
Merci beaucoup. Bien, merci vous autres. C'était magnifique. C'était magnifique.